Welcome to this EDUcast, monitoring Cisco video environments, correlating network, platform, and endpoint telemetry, sponsored by Nectar and Telecom Reseller. Today we have Stephen Purcell, Senior Director, Product Management at Nectar, and I'm Gary Auden. And as we always do, we talk about our agenda. First thing we're going to discuss is how collaboration is changing, how that affects real-world operations, especially the challenges. What's unique about video versus other real-time applications? Segmenting the problem, Nectar's approach to the problem, and delivering business value. As we've pointed out, and you've seen in the past, there's a lot of growth in video conferencing, but you really need to monitor it, measure it, and mitigate the problems because more and more people are preferring to work with video conferencing. So let's start off with the first slide. Video conferencing has become very popular. What has happened in the market? Would you speak about the new platforms, multiple networks, endpoints, and vendors, please, Stephen?
So the challenge that's happened in the market right now is there's a large portion of the markets have moved to the cloud. And so a lot of customers are feeling the pain of that as the call control for video has moved up out of their control from the on-prem solutions that they're used to in the past. Instead of having a single platform that a end user or a company subscribes to, there are multi-vendor environments for these video calling solutions that will actually bridge together, and you can have, say, Cisco and Microsoft or other different types of video conferencing that happens across multiple vendors in the same call. And video has become a major collaboration tool in today's marketplace. A lot of companies that I've been on calls for recently are actually taking on video first mentalities where the conference calls will have the majority, if not all, of the participants actually participating in a video session. This will be regardless of whether they're at offices, work from home, or on the road.
This is basically video anywhere now.
It is video anywhere, and it's also video from multiple types of devices, which we'll talk about later, that compounds the issue.
So let's move on to the word challenges, all right? There's always challenges with technology. What are the operational challenges that are occurring with video collaboration?
So a lot of the challenges you have with video collaboration are very similar to what the original challenges were when you started out with voice over IP. So the challenges with video fall along these same lines where you're going to have very specific vendor-based tools that will monitor just that specific vendor's solution and give you information feedback about the specific vendor. You're also going to have network management tools, which are going to give you information about the network that it's running on top of. But there's not necessarily going to be any information about that, about the voice and video environment. Platform visibility may give you information on on-prem video solutions. Voice and video expertise is going to be needed not just for tier 1, but tier 2. And that's going to be a blending of those where you may have video challenges that are going to be different than your voice challenges. And then end user behavior. End user behavior is probably one of the biggest impacts to video there is. Because there are so many different modalities you can actually have an endpoint on, whether it be a hard phone, whether it be a video device, whether it be their own phone in their hand, or the PC and what's running on that PC can have probably the biggest impact to the actual experience for a company's video solution.
As we move forward, what are the user expectations then of video conferencing? Because if it's not what I want, I'm not going to use it.
Correct. So like you can see on this slide here, video is very personal. Before, when you had voice conferences only, no one could actually see the user. But now that you're interacting with someone in a more face-to-face fashion over video, people tend to see it a lot differently. It's kind of strange because you can have a face-to-face meeting And it doesn't feel the same, and I don't know if you've experienced this, as when you're on a screen with someone looking at you. It's almost like people feel like when you took a photo of them, and you know, people want to get dressed up and make sure you look perfectly, or the experience is great, but there's a real kind of vanity to video where it seems almost like someone's taking a picture of you. And so having a perfect Netflix, YouTube HD-like experience is what people think that experience should be like for video calls. And then you have technology challenges. So when you add the complexity of what am I running this video on top of, that adds a whole new level of complexity to how the performance of the video is being impacted. I could be running I could have too many open windows on my PC, for example. That's actually slowing my PC down and causing, video impact. I have a cell phone that may be older than somebody else's phone who's newer, and I may not get as good quality. Maybe I'm hanging off of Wi-Fi compared to the cell network. There's a ton of different challenges you'll experience from endpoints today.
I think that's an important point when you talk about technology challenges. Your last bullet, buffering. And I'm so used to buffering with streaming that I would not tolerate that with a live video chat. Is it correct?
Right, because when you're trying to have a video conference, because voice is such a smaller footprint, it's easier to be more real time with a collaborating with someone over voice. That when you introduce video into it, if there's any delay at all, it's almost like the old days where you would have delay on a voice line and then you would wait for the response back, and it was kind of like talking over a CB radio. In video, it compounds that problem even worse because you can actually see the person sitting in front of you, and if there's any type of delay coming back, it really hampers that call.
I'm going to ask you personal questions. When you see video and it's pixelating, do you find you prefer to just have the voice than a pixelating picture?
I think most people, for example, will actually turn video off. I think because they feel like it's, number one, it could be a bandwidth issue. So I think the knee-jerk reaction for people using video will be to shut the video down, which they think would improve the throughput of the call. And then second, I think it's distracting. I think while you're trying to collaborate with someone, if you're constantly seeing a video problem, then it's distracting to the call and it hurts the productivity of the call, and so they'll end up turning the video off.
Let's move on to the collaboration health domains. All right, you divide collaboration health domains into 3 parts. What are the differences and how do they affect video conferencing?
The 3 parts we divided into are platform, network, and endpoint. The differences are the platform is the actual platform that the video system runs on top of. So you could have cloud services, servers, etc., that you're actually running the call control on top of. You have network, which is where the voice and video actually run across. And then you have the endpoint, which is the device you're using to run collaboration on. Now, endpoints can actually be more than just the device, the actual rendering of the video, because it may be, you have to include the headsets in there, you have to include the cameras. I mean, there's so many different types of devices that make up that endpoint as a whole, and all of those can affect the experience.
There are different vendors for platforms, different vendors for networks, endpoints. How do you pull it all together into a sort of global view? Because what you're telling me is that lots of people, even outside my organization, that are my partners, my vendors, and so forth, will want to do video with me, but yet they may have a different set of products than I have.
Yeah, so we want to start with kind of the core of what we're doing here, which is foundation, diagnostics, and perspective, and then how those fit into monitoring, reporting, and diagnostics. So what foundation is going to do is it's going to give you really deep insights into platforms and network. It's going to give you deep insights into the call control itself. so that you can see what's the performance of sessions, how's the actual calling environment performing, what's happening with it on a day-to-day basis. And then Diagnostics is going to be able to dive down into the details of exactly what's happening on the network. So how are things flowing on the wire? What's the latency and packet loss that you may be experiencing? How is it flowing through the network, which is just as important? Is it taking the path that it's supposed to through the network? And then perspective is one of those things that's going to be able to go out and give you information based on synthetic transactions through your network to make sure that you're going end to end through your network for QoS the way it should be. Are packets arriving with the correct QoS markings that they left with, and you're making sure that the network is handling them appropriately. Because you have multiple vendors today, I see very few companies that are single platform. You're able to take this solution and look at it cross-platform. In one view, I can see calls that go between vendors over different network components. These can be inbound or outbound through specific SIP trunks using different endpoints in the environment, whether those be Plantronics, Jabber, or Logitech.
When you talk about all of this, are you saying that I can see this in real time rather than after the call is done, like a call detail recording?
Right. I think that's important to take note of, as the reporting aspect of this. Not only does it give you traditional post-call reporting and reporting based on what's happening within your environment, but this solution actually lets you see calls as they're in flight. So there are video calls that can be taking place, say, in a Cisco meeting server environment, and I can see those calls as they're happening in real time. So someone in operations can then go in and react to what's happening for calls taking place right now.
You have the words Nectar Foundation here. Enterprises need a foundation for monitoring and reporting about video cooperation. What is the Nectar Foundation?
So Nectar Foundation is what's going to give you traditional unified communications monitoring across multiple vendors. And the way we're doing that is we're putting in what you see here, which is kind of like a layer cake view, where I'm looking at a call between two people and giving you all of the information about that, regardless of what platform it's set on. You can see here Russell was using a headset over a laptop to call me where I was actually sitting on a physical phone on a desk. You can see that below at the very bottom, Russell was connected to Wi-Fi, I was connected to a wired port, and then the call control, which is the platform in the middle here, which is what servers did Russell connect to in order to link over to the Cisco system that my phone's actually connected to and what path that took. Foundation really gives you a holistic view of your entire voice and video environment so that you can see how it's performing, how it's impacting user experience, and make very detailed decisions as to what to do about certain issues that are happening in the environment.
You know, one of the questions I would have is, as an operator of a video collaboration session, what kind of details should be reported? What are examples?
Yeah, so this is an example of the live video sessions that we talked about earlier. You're going to want to know things like source to destination for these specific video calls, and you're going to want to know which side of the call could be having issues. And then the way we're showing this here is we're actually breaking it down, not only about what's happening with the video, but also what's happening with voice, and then breaking those two streams out. So on the top, I'm showing video metrics, and on the bottom, I'm showing audio metrics, and I'm showing them both directions. And I can very quickly see where we have degradation on this call, where I'm actually showing you here on this red bar that the quality indicator has hit a threshold for that specific video metric coming from the source of who placed the call.
That gets into the next question. Once a problem has been determined, what kind of diagnostics are necessary to mitigate the problem?
So this is our diagnostic solution where we're actually able to see calls in flight on the wire in a customer environment. And I'm going to be able to look at not only the audio, but also the video, because if there's a chance that both of the media takes a separate path, I'm able to see that. And what I'm doing here is I'm actually looking at the network and what's happening with the network at the same time these calls are taking place. So for live calls and historic calls, I can go back in and see how did the network itself affect this call. Because just looking at the platform, which is what traditional UC monitoring tools do, isn't enough to then dive into what was actually taking place on the network while this call was taking place.
Would this help me with the finger pointing and reducing that problem?
Absolutely. So it not only helps in finger pointing internally, but it can help with finger pointing externally. So I'll know immediately whether it was the actual platform itself in the call environment that was having an issue, or whether it was something within the network that was impairing the call. And if you use diagnostics to actually do what we call bracketing the SBC, so I can see the raw SIP as it's coming in from a service provider, and I know that if I'm having SIP problems for outbound calls, is it happening on my side of the network or is it happening on the provider's side of the network? And it's one thing that SIP providers have actually said that they like, because at the end of the day, your provider wants you to have a good experience. And if you're not having a good experience, they want to rectify that problem as quickly as possible. And if you're able to provide details to show them it's actually happening on their side of the SIP trunk, and you can give that to them, they're able to rectify that problem faster than they were if they're just starting to troubleshoot without much data.
The word perspective pops up on the screen. How does Nectar's perspective actually resolve a lot of these issues?
So we'll resolve a lot of these issues because we're taking a look at it in two ways. One, you can look at call quality information before you even deploy your voice or video network. The perspective agents can sit around the network and talk to each other, place phone calls, make sure that the network is performing the way it's supposed to, make sure call quality is performing the way it's supposed to before you ever deploy your first endpoint. The second thing you can do with this is companies will leave these active after a voice system and video system has been deployed, so they can guarantee during off-peak hours that nothing changes and calls are flowing the way they're supposed to, so that when they come back in the morning, they already know whether calls are going to be working the way they're supposed to or not. But it really gives you a very low overhead solution to guarantee call quality that isn't impacting anything in your calling platform.
Now, we've talked a lot about technology and all the solutions, but if I'm budgeting for this, I need some business value out of this. I'm investing in video collaboration, monitoring, and reporting. How do I justify that? Would you provide some points about that?
Yeah, so you're going to have kind of three areas here. You're going to have your enterprise IT area for voice and video support teams. You're going to have voice and video managed service providers. And then you also have UCAS and hosted collaboration providers. So for your enterprise IT groups, this is going to bring a lot of benefit to not only tier 1, tier 2 help desk, but advanced end user support for your engineers. Your architects and your contact center managers are going to be able to provide. You're going to be able to provide detail for your collaboration architects, your contact center managers. Validating your ROI on your UC investment is incredibly important, and having the right data to show that it's performing the way it's supposed to is a key metric for an enterprise IT staff. You also want to be able to diagnose and troubleshoot issues quickly so they can help validate that ROI. Voice and video managed service providers, they're able to use the solution so that they can ensure their managed service that they're providing to their end user is meeting the SLAs that they have in place with that end user. They're also able to provide expertise from their customer support specialists, their engineers, and their executive leadership. They're able to provide reporting based on what the voice and video solution is doing. And again, they're able to ensure the SLAs for outages against outages for their customers.
I think one of the points that needs to be made here is if you build it well, monitor and mitigate the problems well, you increase the confidence of users in using this platform and this technology.
Absolutely, because if the platform has issues, people will just by instinct use something else. I think everybody's experienced where most companies today have multiple collaboration platforms. And if one has even a hiccup of an issue, they'll just switch over and start using another one. And before you know it, the entire investment that you've made into that specific collaboration platform is being undermined by the fact that they've had a few issues and everyone will move over and just use a different one. And
I'm wondering, I'm working on an article about shadow IT, and this makes me think of people doing shadow video conferencing, which I can't control as an IT organization.
that's right. I've seen a lot of I've seen a lot of use cases where people will download their own app off app stores and then run their calls that way, just because the perception of the internal IT's collaboration system is so bad because of what's happened that they move off of it completely and end up using freeware tools out there to conduct their meetings.
I'd like to thank you very much, Stephen, for this information. I have some resources here on the screen where you can take a look at the Nectar solutions, and the Frost and Sullivan best practices report was very interesting. If you need to contact Nectar or request a demo, here are the links for that. And I'd like to thank you again, Stephen, for this very interesting, in fact, a tutorial on video conferencing.
Thank you.